What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to both Joshua and Jacob for their contribution to the channel. Alright, this actually was a couple of days ago when they contributed to the channel, but I just haven't been able to shout them out in the video because the videos I had did earlier, I didn't think were the right type of videos for me to do it. But I want to give a shout out to them for their contributions to the channel. And I want to also give a shout out to Aram for his contribution to the channel. And I saw your video idea, and I think that's a pretty good idea. And I will do a video about that subject. I want to thank everybody that supports me. I want to thank everybody that's over on the Patreon. If you're not over the Patreon, I suggest that you go over to the Patreon. All right, there's only $2 per month, and I upload regularly on the Patreon. I believe there are about 150 videos on the Patreon. And I also want to thank everybody that wished me a happy 40th birthday. Now, this is interesting. Now, I saw this the other day, right, with this guy. Now, I believe his name, it's pronounced Ray Ciccarelli, or Ray Kick. I believe it's Ray Ciccarelli. Hope I pronounced it correctly. And of course, he made a big whoop-de-doo about how he was leaving NASCAR after NASCAR, officially banned the Confederate flag from all events and from all appearances. But what's so funny to me was I wasn't aware that NASCAR hired, an insult comic to run its Twitter. Okay, so Ray Ciccarelli announced after NASCAR banned the Confederate flag, which I think is a good thing. He said, "I'd like to announce I'm retiring from NASCAR after this season. I cannot drive a car for a league that won't allow my special flag." So, NASCAR responded to him by saying, "We actually had to Google who you were. I'm sure your dozens of fans are real sad about your crusade to defend participation trophies." Man, you know what, man? I might start watching NASCAR. I might start watching NASCAR and using my Sheriff Buford T. Justice voice when I'm watching that sumbitch. Yes, sir. I'm gonna watch NASCAR from now on. Yes, sir, Bubby. And ain't no sumbitch gonna get in my way. Catching that bandit. But this guy's last name just drew interest. Ciccarelli. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, nobody knows who he is. But I believe it's Ciccarelli, right? So that's Italian, right? What the fuck is an Italian doing so immersed and so in love and infatuated with the Confederate flag there? Like segue into my Archie voice there. You got this guy named Ciccarelli there. Loves the Confederate flag. Why? They didn't like it. Did they know that about a century ago they considered just niggas? No, but the old Klan wouldn't have accepted you guys. Like, huh? So, I'm reading a little bit. Before I did the video, I was reading a little bit about Italian Americans in the Civil War. And most Italian Americans at that time were, you know, basically upstarts, immigrants. Not most of them are well-to-do yet. And most Italian Americans served in the Union Army. But a few did serve in the Confederate Army, who I have to gather were, descendants of Ciccarelli here, pictured. But it's funny. There was a guy that the Lincoln administration tried to actually get on their side, to actually fight for the Union. His name is Giuseppe Garibaldi. All right, I just read about this guy today. So my knowledge of this is still pretty basic, but I was reading about it because this piqued my interest. So his name was Giuseppe Garibaldi, right? And he basically was like the George Washington of Italy. He basically led the freedom. Basically, he led for the independence of Italy during the 1850s. He and his volunteer army, who were outnumbered, chased out the Bourbon rulers of Sicily. And they created the Kingdom of Italy under the ruler Victor Emmanuel II. And basically, for all intents and purposes, liberated Italy. All right? So he was an international hero at that time. And the Confederate Army at the beginning of the Civil War were kind of kicking the Union's ass, right? So Lincoln and his administration tried to draft Garibaldi on our side. Garibaldi would have fought, but he wanted total control of the Union Army, which I think Lincoln and them were not willing to do because of his Italian heritage. And also, Garibaldi was a staunch abolitionist, firmly against slavery. And he wanted the cause for the Union to be firmly, to announce that this war was going to be a war against slavery, which Lincoln initially refused to do. This was a year and some change before the Emancipation Proclamation. And Lincoln kind of had to force it to be, a war more forced against slavery. So, therefore, the Confederate Italians were against Garibaldi. So, therefore, by default, you have to reason that they pretty much fought on the Confederate side because they were for slavery. So now I go 160 years later to this fella, Ray Ciccarelli. Dude, no matter how you look at it, you're a sellout. You're a sellout to the George Washington of your country. You're a sellout because you fought for the Confederate Army. Well, your descendants did. And you're a sellout because you're waving the rebel flag, a flag upon which the people who created that flag 160 years ago looked at you as a nigger. It wasn't until sometime during the 20th century that the KKK kind of started looking at you guys as, okay, you're white. I guess you're pretty much white. You're white. But the old KKK didn't like niggers, of course, us, but they didn't like, Hispanics. They didn't like Italians. They didn't like Irish. They didn't like anybody. They were extraordinarily xenophobic and totally against immigration. But when they said immigration, they weren't just thinking about Hispanics. They were thinking about everyone. Everyone. But you want to raise the rebel flag? Go ahead, you sellout fucking piece of shit. So, that's all I got to say. Tell me what you guys think.